Hey everyone, Kelly here, and I want to talk about all the books I read in August. I'll just give my caveat at the beginning that I am filming this after one of my kids is asleep while the other one is away with my husband, and so there's no natural light. So yeah, I'm noticing that this color might not be the best in no natural light, but we're pushing through because I just have to film when I have to film. But I had a great reading month in August. I read, I counted it and I forgot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 books. One was a 3-star, one was a 5, and the rest were all 4s, which I think that's pretty good. Like 4 is like a solid read for me. Not like a favorite of all time, but a solid read. And then, a 3-star. And my 3-star was a short story collection, which often get 3 stars. Sorry, I have a cat that's decided it wants to be on my rocker. So, oh well, you get to see Cole. There he is. He wants to hang out with everyone. So, like I said, my 3-star is a short story collection. This is Fit for the Gods, edited by Jen Northington and S. Zainab Williams. And this is all like Greek mythology retellings that are gender bent, have different race, like definitely a lot of queer stories. I would say probably 90% of these are queer stories. And so I had started it in June as part of like Pride Month, and then I just didn't like a lot of these, so I took 3 months to read it. Yeah, hopefully he doesn't knock anything off of there. There were some highlights, like let me just find the index. And a lot of the highlights were people I had already read from before, like Sarah Gailey, probably my favorite story in here. Mia P. Manasala, and trying to think of, she wrote a cozy mystery. I'll put it here because I don't remember. And she writes like, this one is, I think it's Filipino heritage, and this one was The Furies, but they're Filipino, and they're a detective agency. And so yeah, that one was a favorite, and I had read from that author before. And I'm trying to remember, Alyssa Cole, who writes a lot of romance. I really liked hers. So the 3 authors that I read from before were my favorites. There were a couple others sprinkled in there that I thought were good, and the rest of them were like 2 stars. There was a couple that I almost quit on. So yeah, I get to 3 because a lot of these I just didn't love, but there were a couple standouts. So it's one of those that if you're really into Greek mythology and you want some more queer stories, maybe get this from the library or read it on Kindle or whatever. But yeah, I probably won't be keeping my copy of it. And then now, a bunch of 4 stars. He's just gonna do this the whole video, so hope you like cats. The one that was probably my lowest 4-star was Paladin Strength by T. Kingfisher, which is sad because she's one of my favorite authors, and I gave the first book in this series, The Saints of Steel, a 5-star. Loved it. This one was more of a traveling story, and I'm just not a fan of a traveling story. I liked the main characters, but it's long for a romance. It's 480 pages or something like that, and most of it they're traveling. It's we're breaking down camp, we're traveling, we're setting up camp, people maybe getting attacked, blah blah blah, same thing over and over again until we get towards the end. And then I was invested towards the end, but the traveling part, sorry it's shiny with the lamps and stuff, wasn't my favorite. But I still love this world. This is in the world of the White Rat, which is the same world that Sword Heart is in and some of her other books. And I did really love the main characters in this one, just not all the traveling, and could have been shorter. These are based around this. The Saints of Steel are a religious order whose god has died before the series starts, and so all of these paladins are kind of untethered because they've always been serving a god and they don't really know what to do now, and so they're kind of set on these tasks and then fall in love along the way. So yeah, the 2 main characters were just a super sweet romance because the paladin, he's this big gruff guy and he's used to women kind of being afraid of him a little bit, but then the woman in this is a big lady and she's a nun and she's tough, and so they're pretty evenly matched in a fight and all that, which they do fight sometimes in this book. And so I just love that, and they're also really caring to each other. And yeah, I loved a lot about both of the characters. And then I read Antony and Cleopatra by Shakespeare. I have been doing some like history study, and this was kind of like part of my ancient Egypt study. Not that this is like yes, this is based on the history of Antony and Cleopatra, but obviously fictionalized. But I like to throw in some fiction when I'm studying history to kind of liven up history, give a little historical fiction. And yeah, I had tried to read this a few years ago, and I was just really struggling. I was just reading the play just with my eyes and everything, and I was really struggling. I only got through 2 acts. And then this time I decided to listen to it while reading, and that is the way to go, because it makes it feel more like a performance, which obviously plays are meant to be performed. It would be even better if I was like watching the play. But yeah, listening to it, it was like a full cast. So like they had all the characters, they could like embody the characters with their voices. I could hear when they were angry and when they were passionate and all this stuff. And Cleopatra is drama queen, like the original drama queen. And I loved it. Every scene she was in, I ate it up, loved it. Didn't love so much when it was the triumvirate, like the 3, what are they called? Like the 3 guys who run Rome, Caesar and Mark Antony, and who's the other guy? Lepidus. When they're all like talking, they're like talking about war and all that stuff, like didn't really care about those scenes. But anytime Cleopatra is on the page, I was like, yes. So yeah, if you like high drama and you want a tragedy that is based off of some history, then, pick it up. But I would suggest listening to it while reading. I still liked reading it while listening because, some of the words are hard to catch because of the, it being from so long ago, and Shakespeare, so it was like helpful to see the words on the page while listening to it. All right, and then I finished Fire by Kristin Cashore. I've been reading this for a few months, and I found these Graceling books. I do that. I ended up reading them for a few months because the pacing is just off in these books for me. They'll be like, there's so much character development that like there'll be a long time when nothing's happening, and then a bunch of stuff is happening, and then there'll be like another lull, and then a bunch of stuff is happening. So it's a little bit off in terms of pacing for me, but I do really love the way she writes characters. I loved Fire and all the characters in this. So this is basically kind of a condemnation of rape culture, pretty much. So Fire is what they call a monster. So there's monsters in this world. There are human monsters and like animal monsters. So there could be like a lion monster or a panther monster or a raptor monster. And it just means that monsters have this ability to kind of control people. So they can kind of control the minds of people. They're also like extremely beautiful, and everybody's like in love with them. So when Fire goes around, she's very beautiful, and everybody just wants a piece of her, whether it's just to appease her and like all that, or wants actually like a piece of her, and so it is that like, and she gets blamed of like that she's manipulating. And even when she isn't using her mind control, when she's just, because she is like really sensitive about not using her mind control, everybody just assumes that she is like manipulating them when she's just like, you're consumed with my beauty, like it's not me. And so we follow Fire, and she is brought in by the royalty because they want her to like interrogate some prisoners because there's like a coup going on, and she's really hesitant about using her mind manipulation because she doesn't want to do that. But then can she do it for the good of her country and all that stuff? So I do really like this book. It just took me a while to get through it. And I'm going to continue that series. I am enjoying it. And then another Egypt historical fiction I read was Mara, Daughter of the Nile by Eloise Jarvis McGraw. And this one was less successful. I still gave it 4 stars because, once again, this was like so dramatic. It was like reading a soap opera, and I was just like eating it up in terms of it being fun. But this is definitely not historically accurate. There was like some fun, setting the scene in Egypt and all that. But like the kind of way the like villain in this is Queen Hatshepsut, and they really like villainized her, and that's not really like historically accurate. Like her reign was actually a really peaceful time in ancient Egypt and all this. So I didn't really love like necessarily like the way they were framing the politics of the time. And obviously we don't know exactly what was going on at that time. So yeah, but they really made the like female queen like evil in this. But we are following a young girl or a young woman who is a slave, but then escapes and kind of like becomes a slave for some, like it has a new master, but becomes a spy for her new master. And then she ends up being like a double agent spy. So it's very much drama, intrigue. She falls in love with one of the people that she's spying with, you know. So there is romance, there is like politics and royalty and all that stuff. So it was fun, but it was definitely written in like, I think it was written in the 50s originally. Like, this cover was came back out in the 80s, but this was originally written in the 50s. There's a whole lot of fat shaming in this, I will tell you that. So just be aware of that. They talk about one of the people that is like supposed to marry the pharaoh is from a different country, and they like, it's kind of racist, and it's like they have a lot of comments about her body. So just keep that in mind, that it is definitely from like the 50s, but high drama and kind of soapy and fun. And short, like super short. Like I think I read this in like 2 days maybe. It's like 270 pages. And then I read a poetry book. This is Counting to Scent by Clint Smith. And I have read both of his poetry books. The other one I gave 5 stars because it was like more about parenting, like the poems and that. And so I really connected. This one is definitely focused on race and still excellent writer. His poetry is so good. There were several of these I read out loud to my husband. He just has a way with words. I would highly recommend it. I don't read a lot of poetry, but I think his writing is just phenomenal. And I will read basically anything he comes out with, whether it's poetry or nonfiction or whatever. I will read anything by Clint Smith. So I would highly recommend this. And once again, it's really short, just a little poetry book. I did take my time. I like to think about the poem, so I'd only read like 2 or 3 a day and then like think and then pick it up the next day, but I really enjoyed that. And then I read a book with my daughter. I read City of the Plague God by Sarwat Chadha, and she's doing some of my history study with me. And so we were reading some things about ancient Mesopotamia, and this is a middle grade book that's part of the Rick Riordan Presents. So he has like people do books based off of mythology from different places in the world. And so this is based off of ancient Mesopotamian mythology, like the gods from that, god and goddesses, and then also about the Epic of Gilgamesh. Those characters are in this as well. And this was really good. We had a lot of fun reading this, but when it says City of the Plague God, keep that in mind because there's a lot of plague and gross stuff. So if you're somebody that gets squeamish hearing about maggots, other kind of things like that would be around disease, you might not want to listen to this on audiobook. Because there were times when I was a little squeamish, but characters are great and the story is great. So this, we are following a boy named Sikander, and his brother had recently died, and so he is kind of basically helping his parents run their restaurant, but he's like, you know, in middle school, so he's doing this outside school, but he really wants to keep it going because the restaurant is named after his brother. Helps him feel connected to his brother, and then like somebody attacks the restaurant, and it's definitely like not a human. And so that sets off a whole thing. A plague god is coming to attack, and there's something that Sik's brother brought back from Iraq that this plague god is looking for, and so Sik has to find out what it is that he's looking for, and you know, save New York City. So it's definitely like questy, high adventure, a little bit of gross stuff, but really good characters, a lot about grief. I really enjoyed the mythology in this one, so I'd recommend it if you have a middle schooler, and as long as you can handle some of that kind of yucky stuff. It wasn't over the top because it's for kids, but still, I don't love bugs, so it was a little, those parts were a little hard for me. And then I read The Spare Man by Mary Robinette Kowal, and this is a sci-fi murder mystery. So this is taking place in the future. There's like basically cruise ships that are spaceships that are cruise ships, And so these two main characters are on their honeymoon, and then a murder happens, and her, you know, new husband is accused of murdering this person. And so she has to find out who really did it, because she knows her husband did it, and didn't do it. And her husband was a detective. He's a retired detective. And so like kind of them together while he's in custody are solving this murder mystery on a spaceship, cruise ship. And it's really fun. Like it definitely has like a 20s vibe, which you can see from the cover. Every chapter starts with a cocktail, and there's lots of fancy clothing and cocktails and all that kind of stuff. There, the main character has chronic pain, so there's a lot of representation there, and it never like goes away. You know how sometimes you might have like, there's kind of lazy representation where they'll be like, oh yeah, this person has a cane, but we only hear about it a couple times or when they're running. But it's very obvious that this is something she lives with every day, and every like movement, all that. She feels that her pain from, she had an accident and surgery and all that, and she that affects her whole life, and so there's that representation. And I also love that this is like a very casually like queer, and like the people using the pronouns when they introduce each other, and it just makes it so casual, and it shows how like it doesn't have to be a big deal. Like you can just identify however you want and say that when you greet someone. And so I enjoyed that part of it. It also has a cute little dog, and this dog plays a big part in it. That's her service dog, and yeah, and he's super cute, and she uses him a lot to question people because everybody loves the little dog and kind of lets down their guard when the dog's around. So yeah, this was really entertaining, and I would recommend it. I didn't give it 5 stars because it got a bit long. Like, it's not even that long. It's only like 350, but there were times in the middle where it just felt kind of repetitive, where I was like, okay, let's find out who did it. So maybe the pacing was off a little bit, but I still had a good time with these characters and in this like, you know, futuristic setting. And then I read A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher, and this was so good. I love this. This is like a fairy tale type thing. It's supposed to be like a Goose Girl retelling, but I would say it's more like Goose Girl inspired, because it definitely doesn't follow the plot lines of the fairy tale. But this was really great. So this is about Cordelia, whose mother is a sorceress, and kind of her main power is that she can control other people. So she often controls Cordelia and makes her completely obedient, makes her like sit really still, or makes her be bubbly and social when Cordelia's not. And you know, so she has like complete control over her daughter, and she can control other people, but this is like the person that she usually controls. And then something happens in their village, and so they have to leave, and the mom is like trying to like get in with this like rich guy. I don't remember if what like his status is. I think he's a squire. And so she's trying to get married to him, like seduce him so that they can be set for life, and also so Cordelia can be out in society and also marry a rich man in order to ensure her mother's like future wealth and all that. But then, you know, our other main character in this is the squire's sister, who's like, I think she's in her 50s, and she knows something's up because she can just tell Cordelia is a little afraid of her mom, and she also does not like the lady that's trying to like court her brother. And so so it's Cordelia and what is the other woman's name? I want to say Hester. Hester, yes. So they're kind of like the main characters, and it's really interesting to follow like, you know, a young girl who's probably around, I think she's like around 14, and then like a 50-year-old woman, and those are the two main characters we're following. I love them both. I really enjoyed kind of like the fairy tale aspects, the like wicked witch kind of, you know, character that we know is evil from the very start, and how we're going to like conquer that. There's definitely some intense moments in this, you know, to try to like save the day and all that, and I just highly recommend it. I love T. Kingfisher's writing, and I especially love reading her fairy tale retellings. I just think she's so inventive of way she takes fairy tales and really like reinvents them and puts new things, like this whole like, you know, it's all metaphor obviously for, you know, having abusive parents, like overly bearing parents. And yeah, it was really good. I would recommend it. She always has a little bit of creepy stuff in it, so just keep that in mind too, because there's definitely some creepy stuff going on, especially in the last half. And then my last 4-star was A Reaper at the Gates by Sabaa Tahir, and this is the 3rd book in this series, and I'm reading this like 1 book a month with a group, and this one was not my favorite. I've still been giving every book 4 stars because I'm very invested in the characters and what's gonna happen and looking forward to the 4th book. But this felt like the bridge book to me. You know how sometimes the 2nd book is a bridge book? This felt like a bridge book to me. There were some of our main characters that we didn't spend as much time with, or that their plots were not necessarily compelling in this, but were getting us to like whatever is going to happen to them in the 4th book. And then there was like one character that we were definitely like really invested in this book, and it was like their book. But I didn't feel like all of our main characters had an even amount of page time or like importance in the story, but we got a lot of reveals in this, definitely setting up for a big conclusion. So I'm still giving it 4 stars, even though maybe plot wise it was 3 stars. I'm invested in this world and these characters, and we'll keep going. This is definitely like a more graphic YA fantasy because there's lots of death and battles and like political things that are pretty intense. So keep that in mind, but I have been really enjoying this. My husband just got home, so let me see if I can finish. My last one, my 5-star book, is Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaghy. And this one I did have to pause in the middle because it feels like we're approaching this. This is definitely climate fiction, and in this time, there's a lot of wildfires, sea levels are rising. And since I live in an area that gets a lot of the smoke from the Canadian wildfires, and we have a lot of really bad air quality days, I had to put this down for a little bit when we were having some bad air quality days. But the way she writes characters, I was so connected to these characters, and we did see from different perspectives, and I was like invested in every single perspective that we read from. This like pulled my heart out. I was like gasping at certain points, like my husband was like, "Are you okay?" So yeah, I was completely invested in these characters. We're following this family who lives on this island. It's between like Tasmania and Antarctica, and it's like the last seed vault where they're like storing seeds, but the sea level is rising and they have to like abandon the research station and all of that. And everybody else has left the island except for this family. They are the like kind of final caretakers. They live in the lighthouse there, and they are the like final carers for the seeds before a ship comes to bring them back to the mainland and save as many seeds as they can. And so this family has been living there for I think about 10 years since the mother died. And so there's a lot about grief in this, and like the relationship between the dad and the 3 kids, and them handling their grief in different ways, and also their grief of like what's happening in the world, and you know, also that this place has become their home and now they have to leave it, or else they can't stay, like with the levels rising, like it's just impossible for them to stay. And it shows like the sadness of leaving a place. And then there's the inciting incident as this woman just washes up on shore, and you know, like they're kind of in the middle of nowhere, so they're like, where did this woman come from? Why is she here? And there's lots of secrets and you know, things happening, but like I don't know, just so much emotional relationship stuff, kind of also emotional about like seeing like how humans have affected the earth, and yeah, it just, and like connection to places and animals and nature. This was beautiful. The writing is beautiful. I was like crying and gasping and sad and happy and feeling the tender love and like, yeah, feeling all the emotions reading this, and absolutely loved it. I own 2 more Charlotte McConaghy books, so I'm definitely going to continue reading more of her books, but know that they're going to like probably rip my heart out and cause all the feelings. But I would highly recommend this. 5 stars. So that's it. That's everything that I read in August, and I will see you next time. Bye.